So I was going to have somebody from AEM introduce me, but if you were at the session yesterday, I really haven't changed a whole lot since then. Sorry, and I do have one sorta a little slide about me. So this is W73, which is driving product safety with TechCom. If you're not here for that, there's a lovely bar down the street and across the left, and all that good stuff. I will say, you all got these feedback sheets. I really do appreciate it. It says on here, please rate the presentation, not the presenter. I would almost ask that you flip that around. You know, the presentation, it's the sad thing about being a consultant, I was told, was that we tell people what they already know. So I think you probably intuitively know everything that I'm going to tell you today. I wish I had a little more Ashley York in me, because he does a great job of teaching, and I almost feel like this is really more of a teaching than a telling you all the wonderful things I know. But anyway, you guys are responsible for creating manuals and videos and decals that the whole purpose really is to go incorporate. Yes, you want your customers to go use your products, but you want your customers to go use your products safely. So what I would like to talk about is things that you can do, and yes, some of them maybe have a little bit to do with what the data format is, but it's really more with what the actual content is. So regardless of whether you're using FrameMaker or InDesign or, boy, I'm going to date myself, Interleaf or Quark or WordPerfect or XML, they really apply to all of those things. So see, you missed the opening line, Wendy. Oh, okay, I kind of do it again. Hold on. Hi, thank you for coming. This is you can tell I'm kind of, it's that last session, and we're a little giddy, and the tequila shots really. We're gonna have to delete that little part from the recording. So a couple of things. First of all, there's just what's the saying from Forrest Gump? You can't fix stupid. It was Forrest Gump, right? So you can't make someone operate a machine safely. I'm sorry, you just can't do it. If somebody wants to go take a guard off, if somebody doesn't want to, they can hurt themselves really if they want to. But at the end of the day, your job is to go provide information to make it safer for them to go operate your equipment. Did you address every probable and reasonable safety concern? And the words probable and reasonable are important here. If you look at a lot of the guidance as far as what you're supposed to include, what you're not, you'll see those words. And did you do everything reasonable for those issues? So let's go a little bit. I will give you I know, Wendy, this is another thing you missed. If you saw the introduction yesterday, same guy. Haven't changed. Talk about how to go drive product safety, what we think you could do. It will be a little bit interactive because me telling you what I think is probably worth you paid for it, really very little. But the group input is great. So this is me, like I said, same dude. So just from a background perspective, people have been doing stupid things. Is it okay to say that? Stupid things for an awfully long time, whether it's going off the Niagara Falls, whether it's fighting bulls. Why the hell would anybody want to go do that? And if they're anything like how old is Caitlin? 23-year-old? 23-year-old, it's not her fault. Nothing is her fault. And I suspect you in a court of law, well, it wasn't my fault. It was the evil manufacturer's fault. They made me do it. And so they don't think it's their fault, and they find some boneheaded lawyer that says, well, yes, I'll go take you to court. And when the court agrees with them, and I've got a brother who's an attorney. Thank you, David. So it can be an expensive proposition, and so yes, I'm trying to keep you. You pay lots of insurance to keep you out of expensive propositions. I'm trying to basically help you avoid that situation. I mean, that's the impetus here. Your job, help your company avoid that situation of ever going to court in the first place. Help people be safer. Of course, we don't want people to get hurt, of course. At least make them informed that says, okay, well, we told you don't do that, and you still did it anyway, you bonehead. So did I go? Ooh, yeah. What are the tools that we have to go inform people, to go address reasonable safety concerns? And we actually have a couple of them, really, really good tools. Certainly manuals is probably first and foremost. It's probably, I would guess, what we spend a lot of time on. So there's my poor representation of manuals. And then we have equipment decals, and this is really the only conference that I ever hear people talk about, okay, how do we, in a very pictograph kind of world, inform people? And there is a lot of science and a lot of thought that goes into, and I was corrected a couple of years ago, we don't have stickers. Stickers are what your 4-year-old plays with. We have decals. And we have safety videos. This is actually one, I think, Ditch Witch I saw. Yep, there he is. This is out on the, as my wife would call it, the YouTubes. And this is out on the YouTube for its safe operation of some piece of Ditch Witch equipment. So, bravo for putting that out there. But these are all good tools that we have. Having said that, there's Trish. Having said that, there are things that we probably need to do in developing that content. So what I'm going to be talking about is how do you go develop that content that's going to minimize the risk of reasonable things that could happen. And so I've broken this really into 6 bullet points, and you can argue with me over, are these the right 6? And when we get to, actually I think we have 6.5. If I forgot one and somebody says, well, Don, what about this? Let's discuss it, because this is not me talking to you, this is us talking together. But you're gonna love this animation, so cool. First of all, information has to be easy to find and use. And if it's not, I'll just spin around. If it's not easy to find and easy to use, if it's not intuitive, if you can't find the information, really, what good is it? I'll tell you that, here's my problem with PDFs. I think PDFs are fine on a desktop display. I think PDFs are crummy on a mobile device. They're just not set up for that. So, that wasn't their purpose in life. And yes, you could create PDFs that are yay big or yay big. And, if you have a training app to go explain people how to go use your app or information, if you have a training session to go do it, that's probably a good sign that it's not very intuitive. So here's the part that did anyone bring ripe tomatoes or apples or any vegetable? Good. So Jana historically has worked in the aerospace world and has worked in the aerospace world for 50 years. And there's something called an ATA 100 numbering scheme. I'll show you an example of it kind of towards the end, but I looked at 3 different OEM manuals. And sometimes the introduction or the forward was first, and sometimes safety was second, and sometimes controls were here. And I hate to say it, but you're confusing as you go from manufacturer to manufacturer from manufacturer, and this is all for the same product line. I'm not going to say it. Same product line. This was the organization pulled from the table of contents. So my challenge for you guys is come up with a standard numbering scheme so that I'm not asking you to touch the content, but hey, the introduction should always be chapter 1. Always, always, always. I don't care what manual whose manual you're looking at. I don't care. If you want to make warranty chapter 2, I don't care what the numbers are, but this is, so Valerie, this is a challenge that I would put to the Tech Pubs Committee, quite honestly, is that you're not going to be talking about your intellectual property. You're going to be talking about how your information is organized so that a mechanic, a technician, always knows, controls are in section, Wendy, give me a number between 1 and 10. Pick one. Pick a number between 1 and 10.
Between 1 and 10?
Yeah. What, between 1 and 10?
Oh, 1 and 10. Probably 4.
4. Controls are always in section 4. Like I said, the numbering really isn't important. What's important is the consistency between manufacturers. I see a lot of value in it. I think it will help and you may say, oh, well, we don't have a preparing the equipment section. Okay, fine, not applicable. Cool, not applicable. So this is something, and like I said, to protect the guilty. You may say, oh, well, accessories are only mentioned in one of these 3 of them. Okay, cool. But so that is you really, coming from another industry, and we did, aerospace, it really works well. It's only been around for 60 years. It is the standard. So I talked a little bit about this on yesterday. Safety information should be easy to understand. Thea talked about reading comprehension level. And in this case, 50% of U.S. adults, and man, this is embarrassing, can't read 8th grade level content. And if the information is not understood, what good is it? So this slide, what would you guess is I'm not going to use the fog one that Thea recommended, but suggested, but something called Fleisch-Kincaid. Who has heard of Fleisch-Kincaid? Okay, so some of you guys, it's a way of measuring what the readability is, and it's like fog. It's a math score that says how many words, how many syllables, how many sentences. Any wild guesses what the reading level of this slide is? 12th grade. 12th grade reading level. So that says half, if I sent this out to the public, half the folks couldn't understand it, which I'm not going to, no judgment. I'm just saying, wow, we need to do better. We need to make our content easier to understand. So, same content, same exact content. And of course, I had to go massage the words around. Any guesses here where we're at? 7.2. So it's, if I can do it, and oh, by the way, I have a degree in engineering. If I can do it, certainly you guys can do it. If you got the subtle dig at engineers, that's good. One of the things that if you delve into readability is something called simplified technical English. And simplified technical English is a way of making your content unambiguous, that you don't have to go interpret what it really means. If I say hit the button, do I really mean hit the button, or do I mean to press the button, or do I mean push the button? So turn off engines not required. Is that turning off engines is not required? Turning off only those engines that are not required? Turn off, power off, de-energize, remove the power, kill the power, switch, and you may say, well, Don, everybody knows push or hit the button, what that means. And it's like, okay, yes, as native English speakers, and most of us are native English speakers, yeah, we get it. But someone who English is not their first language may look at you and go, why would I hit the button? We talk about content reuse, and yes, we talk about content reuse because it makes us more efficient instead of copying and pasting and what if it changes? I have to remember all the places that it exists. But the real value of content reuse is it improves the quality of your content. What do I mean by that? You're saying the same thing the same way all the time. This is an example, should I do it? What the hell? American Airlines. This is in their flight crew operating manual. Are these the same thing? Do these crystal clear exactly the same thing? I say they're close. but one of them talks about while on duty, and the other says within 12 hours. So, my argument is in a court of law, these are not the same things. They're close. They're close, but and this is no kidding from American Airlines. We did a project where we went through and ran an analysis, and there are tools that will allow you to go run an analysis of your content, and it will scare the snot out of you of what you've got in your manual. My friends at Data Conversion Lab will run this really ridiculously cheap. You will be overwhelmed by the data, and you will come back and say, oh my gosh, this is in there. It works on FrameMaker, it works on Word, it works on InDesign, it works on XML. And there's no way that a human is going to go find this kind of stuff. You just don't have that level of detail to remember every sentence, every paragraph that you saw. It will go through and process it. If you want more details, I'm happy to. They call their product Harmonizer. So if you look DC Lab Harmonizer, you'll find it. But it basically, it does a compare at a paragraph level. And so if you're not reusing your content in a no kidding XML kind of way, this is a good tool to help you say exactly the same content, exactly the same way every time. Just as a little side, I'm kind of an old car guy. Well, I'm an old guy, that's true. And I like old cars. And I have a 1967 Ford. And 1967, Ford described the process. Ford had 12 models in 1967. The process for disconnecting the battery was stated 12 different ways. Oh, it's only one way. Yeah, it's only one way, but they did not have content reuse in 1967. So another thing, and this may be falling into the category of things you already knew, it should be in the end user's language. And if you don't comprehend the words, if you don't know English, boy, you're in a bad place. So as an example, who can read this for me? I'll wait. Is not read the manual. Oh, and we'll make it a little sweeter. $25 Amazon gift card will be electronically emailed to the first person that guesses this phrase. And this phrase is in your manuals, I can almost guarantee. So this was Greek, so apparently we don't have any people from Greece in here. So let's try this one. Anyone speak Portuguese? No. So if you're sending your English manuals to Portugal, you can imagine what your friends in Brazil say about Portuguese. Okay, we're going to start to get easy, so I'm going to have to, Valerie, help me. First hand that you see goes up. Help me out here a little bit. Fire away. Very good. $25 gift card. Find me afterwards, and well, or Amazon or whatever, whatever you want. So if you now where are you from? I'm Danish. You're Danish. So perfect. But you get the point. If you don't understand the words, I mean, it's garbled to you. So this is the point. Translation. Yeah, if you want to make it safe for them to go operate, it probably needs to be in a language they understand.
At least you translated it right.
If you translated it right. Well, apparently I was really doggone close, huh? Safety information tied to safety standards. I'm guessing ISO and ANSI are probably the two favorite flavors in this crowd. So one of the things that when we're doing, so you'll get free consulting advice, suggestions right now. It won't cost you a nickel. Is that you should create, if you're in FrameMaker or InDesign or Word, some kind of non-structured format, go create an Excel chart that says, this ANSI standard is related to this part of our content. Why am I asking you to do that? Is so that when that ANSI standard changes, when that ISO standard changes, when that UL standard changes, you know exactly where to go look. And how else the heck are you going to know, unless you've got a really great memory, where it's changed? So, that table, and oh, by the way, if you're in structured content like XML or TIA or something of that ilk, you can go run, or if it's got tags in it that says, oh, this information relates to ANSI blah, 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 blah. I can go run a report that says, where did I have ANSI blah, 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 blah? And it will generate a report for you and says, these are the things that you need to go look at. Kind of as an aside, not so much related to safety, you should do the same thing with your engineering documents. How does our engineering content map to our technical information? Why? Engineering, I'm an engineer. We like to go change things so that when that engineering content changes, you know exactly, oh, well, this content is based off of this engineering drawing. That engineering drawing changed through an ECN. I know exactly where to go look. And so you don't have to scratch your head and say, oh, let me go research that. If you do your homework up front, done in a snap. Makes sense so far? No one's throwing things at me, so I'm going, yeah, good. So a terminology definition. And what does Don mean by analytics? Analytics, the way that Don thinks of it, is how is my content being consumed? So if you only have PDFs on your website, really the only thing you know is who accessed that, or not who, which manuals were accessed. You don't really know, unless you break it up into sections, you really don't know what sections they were looking at. And this is one of the reasons that I do not have a tattoo that says I heart PDF. Whereas if you're if you're delivering HTML invariably, and especially in a modular data format like DITA or S1000D, I can tell you exactly what little chunk of information people were looking up at. So that's different than metrics. Metrics is how long did it take for me to go revise this topic, to go revise this manual. Metrics are, in my bonehead way of looking at things, are measures of your internal efficiency or lack thereof. Analytics are how is your content being consumed? Were they looking at it on a laptop or were they looking at it on a desktop? What country were they in when they were looking at it? What language did they want to go look at your content in? Those are all analytics kind of things. And if you can have Google come back and tell you and do a Google report and say, what manual, I can tell you, if you go to our website, I'll get a report of, these are the companies that went and looked at your website last week. Okay, good. They'll also tell me what pages you visited. It won't tell me who you are. So, I don't know if it was Brad looking at, Don wrote about readability. Okay. But it would say, Tiger Cat, somebody from Tiger Cat looked at readability. Okay, interesting. You can look at your analytics and start to go understand customer behavior and start to understand what are people accessing. And if something is being accessed a lot, that can be one of two things. It can be really good. They're really interested in how to go disconnect the PTO shaft. Or it can be really bad. Customers are having a problem with the PTO shaft. And so it's a very good indication of saying, and invariably it's the bad, it's not the good. They're not looking at the PTO drive shaft process because it's so great. They're looking at it because it's a problem. And so, how long they stayed on that page. Did they go to another page after it? All those analytics are really, really good ways to go find out, customers are having a problem here. I wonder if we should have a video about that, because most of us like having a video and present. That's kind of where we are as a demographic. And so if you have enough hits, if your call center is always getting calls about this particular topic, and you ought to be asking your call center, because that's kind of analytics, where are the problems? What's throwing off people? What do we need to go polish? That's probably a great place to go have a video, or at least say, could we have a video for that? So those are the 6. I threw in a bonus 6.5 one. And you may say, well, Don, what the heck is this? This is, so like I said, I'm old. I embrace it, admit it, a little bit grumpy. In the back of the room, we have these 6 points. I don't think we have the analytics one on here, but we have the 6 points boiled down into a infographic that I had my team put together. There's a pile of these cards on the back. If you want one, please take one. Happy for you to have it. If you would like to get these, because we create 3 or 4 of these a year, send me an email. I will make sure you get a postcard. And I'm not going to bug you. And it's like, you call us, that's great. So I'll go back a little bit to that point that I said about the Air Transport Association and how they number things. ATA Chapter 21, in any manual, in any aerospace manual, it's going to have to deal with air conditioning. Doesn't matter if it's Bombardier, doesn't matter if it's Airbus, doesn't matter if it's Boeing, doesn't matter who, Hawker, Cessna, it doesn't matter. Chapter 21 is always, 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 always air conditioning, fuel, ATA 28. Any mechanic in the world, hey, I've got a problem with the fuel system. Where do I go look in the manual? ATA Chapter 28. I'm not telling you how to go organize your information. What I'm telling you is I think it would be a great service to your customers if you come up with some kind of standardized numbering scheme. I do. I do. I didn't want to. Yeah. If you don't want one, just. If you, I like getting postcards, so, if you want me to drop one in the mail to you, I can do that too.
They don't want to give you their contact information.
Well, that's probably true. See, I told you they were smarter than I am. So, if that's something that you guys, can see eye to eye about doing, I think it would be a good benefit to and you can go ask, your dealers and your end customers, would this be valuable to you? But I can tell you, coming from the aerospace industry, it's just burned into their brains that saying, hey, if I've got a hydraulic issue, I know where to go look. I don't have to worry about what manufacturer. I know where to go look. Chapter 29. So a couple of resources. One of them is an article that I wrote about readability, and it talks about Flash Kincaid. It talks about simplified technical English. It'll take you a good 2.5 minutes to read. If you're having a hard time going to sleep at night, open this bad boy up. You'll be asleep in 2.5 minutes. Works great. The folks at Clarion, and I think Clarion spoke yesterday, if I remember correctly, a really nice article about manuals and product safety. And the one that I thought of, there's places that you probably, and you guys know this, I'm sure, when to go use danger, when to go use warning, when to go use caution, and talks about that. So anyway, that's me. I don't think I have any bonus questions. I guess I will open it up to questions. How are we doing on time? Yeah, I've got a few minutes.
If you have a question, just raise your hand and I will come over.
And did you guys not learn from yesterday? Don gives nice prizes for good questions.
Is that a hint?
I'm sorry?
Was that a hint?
Coming from an aviation background as well, but very procedural driven, and so the way they organize in most flight pubs, the way they organize procedural information is very clear. One sentence means one thing, one step means one thing, and the outcomes are clear. Can you maybe just share a little insight on how to write procedural sections in technical instructional sections in a way that's readable and digestible, in that vein? So
taking the Phil, we've got a price for you. So it's more lavender from Albuquerque, but it's in the it's in a nice travel bag. Again, it's TSA approved. Don't fall off the stage, Don. So just I talked about ATA chapter. ATA also breaks things down by something called section and subject. And subject can be clean, inspection, repair, assembly, disassembly, testing, and there's, I think, 10 different sections that can, and it may not apply to your content. And that's on the maintenance manual side, because obviously there's no disassembly while you're in flight. So yeah, well, you hope. So that's, they do break the information down at a very granular level, which is why the aerospace industry was able to go to something like S1000D. One of the questions that I guess asked is, if we're going to structured content, if we're going to modular structured content, should we go to DITA? And the answer is yes, if you can print money. Because the United States government can afford it, and really I can tell you a lot of companies spend a lot of money trying to go to S1000D and that level of granularity. It's frightfully expensive. But for most places, you can still go break down that content at a reusable topic level, and the key words for what I encourage people to go break their content up is, does this content make sense on its own? And if it makes sense standalone on its own, it can probably be a topic. If it doesn't make sense on its own, no, it probably needs to be part of a larger collection. But the problem is, the bigger the chunk of content gets, probably the less reusable. So, do I have, how to go, if you're doing these 6 things, you're probably well on your way, and really none of them per se had anything to do with structured content. So regardless of what format you're in. Good question. Anyone else? I only brought one prize, so if there's no more questions, I get it.
So when you are like in an unstructured like frame maker, and you're working with a company and you start wanting to kind of like look at section, is it better if you're consistent with like in a segment or a whole company to kind of keep your section? Or do you kind of go through and restructure when you're doing that to try to be consistent between all divisions, all machines? So obviously not all machines that you make are going to be identical, but you're like your electrical or your hydraulics or stuff like that. Is that kind of what you're meaning, like to set them up?
Well, so I will tell you, reuse does not happen across product lines. Reuse happens across systems. So the hydraulics, for an example, are you going to have a lot of reuse within a product family? You may have some, because the Model 100 and 200 are the same, but you'll probably have a lot more reuse, across different product lines. Now the problem is, most technical TechCom organizations are organized by product lines, and the authors are writing content by product lines. So they really, you're fighting the battle with one hand against your back. So I would say, you sure should, and this gets into change management. If you can support it, you probably ought to think about, do I want my writers writing, engines, transmissions, feed systems, controls? You didn't hear me mention any products in there. Whereas if I have, and I'm going to pick on Vermeer a little bit, if you've got tethers and balers and things like that, is there going to be reuse across from a Model 100 to a Model 200? Well, sure there's going to be, of course. But you're going to have more reuse going across control systems. So invariably what we suggest is saying you probably need both. You need people that are working across functional areas, and we'll call it horizontally, and you need people that are vertically making sure my Model 100, does it have all the sections that it needs? And most organizations, it's a difficult thing for them to go wrap their head around. But if you want to go drive reuse, regardless of what format you're in, that's how you go do it. Did that answer your question? Tell you what, $25 gift certificate for you. I'm feeling generous. Like I said, I'm almost giddy. It's at the end of the conference for me.
Don, I have a question for you. So you mentioned about simplified technical English, and then you also mentioned how everybody should organize their content the same. Which of those do you feel is more important? Because everybody's got a lot to do. So what would you prioritize for everybody?
So organization of your content only says, oh, I'm going to put this section here and that section there. It requires no change to the content except an organization of your table of contents.
Do you have a recommendation as to how
I do
much?
not.
You don't?
I am not smart enough to know, of course this is a product safety conference. What should be the first chapter? Safety.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, I can tell you, and this is something that we were doing discovery. Your parts. Everybody has parts manuals in this room. I'm going to assume, right? The first item on a specific item illustration, it should be the first item that you. If you're disassembling it, the first item that you remove. It should be listed in order of disassembly. That is best practices. So yes, that is really changing around content. But as far as simplified technical English and organizing the content, I've got half a mind that says, no, you guys are never going to go do that because somebody's legal department says, oh no, safety has to be in chapter 7. It's just got to be. I'm not going to go win that battle. But if you say, hey, if everybody else says chapter 1 is safety information, okay, are we giving away any intellectual property? Are we messing things up by doing that? I can't think of a bad reason. I can think of a good reason. Rod?
Getting back to the simplified technical English again,
Mhm.
there are different softwares out there that will help you with that.
There are.
HyperSTE.
HyperSTE is, yep.
Any recommendations?
Recommendations, no. But I will offer that there are 3 mainstream ones that are widely used. And if you're taking notes, HyperSTE is by a company, and I can, if you send me an email, the problem with Jana is that we're friends with everybody and we're in love with nobody, which is a very sad place to be in life. But a company called Ediplan developed, and Ediplan, very big in Europe, they have like 700 writers working, and so they developed a tool and said, well, let's go sell it. It's called HyperSTE. It is by far the most affordable tool, and it is by far the least user-friendly. And you're just going to have to, let your budget and let your situation dictate. The other tool, one is called Acrolinks. That's the name of the company, and that's the name of the tool. Acrolinks makes a fine tool. It's a much pricier solution. It's probably the easiest to use. And then there's another one called Congree, C-O-N-G-R-E-E, and the name of the tool is Congree. And again, it's not as expensive as Acrolinks, but it's close. And it's not as usable as Acrolinks, but it's close. So those are the 3 ones, and if you want people to reach out to, happy to say, hey, talk to Michael, talk to the folks at Acrolinks. Torsten, and now this is going to be shocking to you. HyperSTE is Ediplan is primarily a Dutch company. I think they're Dutch. Acrolinks and Congree are, guess which country they came from? Make a wild guess. Who are the most rigid? German. Yeah, they're German companies, and I love Germany, but that's just their mindset. Is you follow the rules. You follow the rules always. You don't stray outside the line. Another brick in the wall. So, but those are the 3 options that I would encourage you to look at. And even if you're in FrameMaker or InDesign, those tools work in FrameMaker or InDesign. So you really, regardless of if you're Word, whatever. I've got asked today, well, what about Grammarly? Am I pronouncing it correctly? Yeah. And I think Grammarly is a step in the right direction, but I don't think you're ever going to say, ooh, Grammarly is really helping us. So, I mean, it's Acrolinks for Dummies, which is why I use it. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Anyone else?
Doesn't Boeing also have software?
So the question is, doesn't Boeing have, see Valerie, short circuit there. You're good. Doesn't Boeing have a tool? And the reality is there are several companies, Airbus has their own tool as well, that they develop their own. And if you have $1 million or $2 million, you too can probably develop your own terminology checker. And terminology checker is a part of, for instance, you may have some places that EPIROC, E-P-I-R-O-C, is all caps. So you may have other places where it's capital E, lowercase f, and it will force you to be consistent. I mean, that's one example of the clever things. Basically, it will take your style guide, and please tell, everybody in here has a style guide, right? Good. Yeah, everybody has a style guide, good. It will take your style guide and basically go implement that, because there's, if you know Val Swisher, and Val kind of works in this industry, Val says, it's impossible. What's a style guide, a printed style guide? What is a printed style guide good for? And the answer is to collect dust. And to expect that your writers are going to memorize every part of your style guide and implement them 100% of the time is ridiculous. It's stupid. And this will at least say, hey, you probably want to go change, passive voice. And I'm, being an engineer, I'm sworn enemies to good English. Yeah, and so it's now, and I've seen, I've even, looked up on the interwebs, give me examples of passive voice. Passive voice is considered bad. It's considered poor English. For life, please don't make me offer to give you, but you can go find out passive voice and active and examples thereof, because I don't get it. But I'm not a technical writer either. So, yeah. But yes, you can go develop your own, but bring lots of money. And oh, by the way, if you go to Acrolinks, there's nobody from Acrolinks here, good. Bring lots of money. I mean, it's not quite that bad, but you be seated when they tell you what the price is. Any other questions? All right, well, please raise your seat back to the locked position, raise your tray tables. You're free to go explore the country. So.